Welcome to Marin Voices and Views. With Lawrence A. Strick, I'm Peter B. Collins. In June, Marin voters will choose from candidates for supervisor in 3 of the county's 5 districts. And over the next 3 months, Marin Voices and Views will bring you conversations with the candidates. These aren't formal debates, but we'll strive to give equal time as we talk about the issues in play. Today, we meet the candidates for District 3, Southern Marin. Kathrin Sears, the incumbent, and Susan Kirsch, her challenger. Welcome to you both.
Thank you very much.
Kate Sears was appointed by Governor Brown to finish the term of the late Charles McGlashan in 2011, and she won election in 2012. A Fulbright scholar with a Harvard Law degree, she also holds a master's on China, a PhD in political science. And before joining the Board of Supervisors, she handled consumer law as a supervising deputy attorney general, and she served as a planning commissioner and in other posts in Sausalito. Kate, in 1 minute, and I'm sure that's difficult for you, but could you please make a brief case for 4 more years for Kate Sears?
I will. Thank you for having me today, Peter. There are significant issues facing the county, whether it's infrastructure and traffic, climate change, or the affordability crisis that affects our ability to retain and recruit quality employees and also maintain the excellence of our schools. I have the experience, the skills, and the track record to get things done. I built relationships, and I know how to navigate among all the players whose cooperation you need. If we are to address the issues that we face, if we are to protect our local values and sustain what is special about Marin, we need to be able to work together and find common ground. This is how I do my job currently as your supervisor, and I look forward to continuing to work together. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Susan Kirsch is a Mill Valley resident for the past 36 years. She has 2 adult children who I met about 25 years ago as their babysitter in the Mill Valley Babysitting Co-op. She holds a master's in speech communication from Case Western Reserve University. She's taught at Case Western and at the high school level. She's the principal in Kirsch Associates, providing management, coaching, planning, and fundraising for nonprofits. She co-founded Citizen Marin in 2011 and has hosted several town hall meetings on housing and transportation issues. Welcome, Susan.
Thank you.
Susan, in a minute, give us your case for replacing Kate.
Well, thank you for giving me a chance to talk about that. I think our system of government is currently broken, and I think a part of the work of my opponent and the entire Board of Supervisors is letting us down. And I'll give you 3 examples of that. I think the one place that we're being let down is that we're being kept in the dark about issues that are really important for people to know. And if given the information, people would be responding to it in a very different way than when we're kept in the dark. Secondly, I think we're not getting wise use of our money. I think we're being put in jeopardy for the way that pensions are being distributed, for the way salaries are being set, and some other issues around funding. And third, I think this current Board of Supervisors is disrespectful of citizen and citizen input, and that there's a lot more that we need to do to be able to be building the respectability and the reliance on groups like the civil grand jury.
All right, thank you very much. I'm keeping time here with my phone, and we're just going to try to keep things
so technological. It's really amazing.
First, let's get your views on the future of the Seminary property in Strawberry. The Branson School wants to relocate there with an expanded student population, and the property owner wants to build 300 new homes. A lengthy review process is now on hold. What's your vision for the property, and how do you balance the need for housing with the impacts on traffic and other factors? First, Kate Sears, 90 seconds, please.
Thank you very much. And you know, as a current member of the Board of Supervisors who this issue will ultimately come to, I can't tell you how I'm going to vote. And so that does distinguish my opponent is much more able to speak and take specific positions. But I want you to know I've been working on this project for a number of years. There was an earlier developer who was extremely inconsiderate of the community, did not listen to the community. I recommended that the seminary replace that developer, and this new team did come in, and a year ago when they first purchased the property, I told them, you need to get out and start talking to people in the community. There are obviously strong views, as is appropriate. The application that has been submitted has very intense uses, and I am concerned, and I want to make sure that whatever ends up on that property is right-sized, it minimizes traffic impacts, and it really is appropriate and harmonizes with the values of that community. So I think there's a lot of work to be done with the application as it currently stands, with a lot of community feedback and input.
All right, Susan Kirsch, same question. What is your position on the seminary property?
Well, I've been talking to a lot of seminary, Strawberry residents, and so I know how strongly they feel in opposition to this project. Just to elaborate, in addition to the 300 units of proposed housing, this is a 1,000-student campus that they're proposing with a staff of 200 people. So when Strawberry residents think about having one road in and out of Strawberry, and they anticipate a project that's that big, they feel very alarmed about the kind of impact that has on their community. You know, there's also a great concern about feeling like there was some work behind the scenes in terms of bringing in the architect who's doing the work on the architectural drawing. You know, when they had their community meeting, you know, Kate was not at that meeting.
That's not correct. I was there for the entire meeting.
Okay. You know, many of us saw Marin Parton there, but you know, having been there, you weren't visible to be there.
I was sitting at the back of the room for the entire meeting.
I see. Okay. So there's a longing for greater leadership, that instead of being in the back of the room, that there might be more upfront kinds of leadership from whoever is the Board of Supervisor representing these people in an unincorporated area. And if I have just a minute or a little bit of time left?
30 seconds.
What I've learned is that people in unincorporated areas, like in our 3rd district, it's Tam El Monte, Marin City, and Strawberry, are at a much greater disadvantage than those of us who live in Mill Valley. We have a planning commission and city councils and staff, whereas people living in these unincorporated areas are very dependent on a supervisor to give leadership to their wants and wishes.
Countywide, renters are being squeezed really right out of the rental market here in Marin, and there's virtually zero inventory. The board recently approved a deal to preserve just 27 units of affordable housing up in Fairfax. But there are thousands of seniors and single parents and young families with housing anxiety, and it's only going to grow as our county ages. What's the right approach, Susan, in about 90 seconds?
In 90 seconds.
There you go. Fix
okay,
that one.
So in 90 seconds. Well, I think it's great that there were the 27 units of housing that were preserved, and there was great celebration of that. What wasn't mentioned is that in Marin City, we have the largest public housing facility with 300 units that under current leadership has been allowed to fall into disrepair, so that there's an estimated $16 million of deferred maintenance in that property. So a part of what we need to do is to get a better balance of understanding where many people are living in need of, you know, the acquired housing being kept up. You know, in addition to that, we've actually made a lot of progress, that we've moved from the concept of PDAs, of high-density housing near transportation, to looking at more infill housing, small unit housing, shared housing. So we are making some progress, partly due to the kind of uproar that there was around PDAs in Plan Bay Area.
Okay, but that doesn't quite address how we solve the housing crisis. Do we build more? Do we restrict the population? What is your solution?
Well, I love the idea of restricting the population. I don't know how we'll do on actually restricting, but I think we could look at restricting. I think the thing about building, well, in part, we know that the way they controlled growth in the past was to restrict water hookups. Mm-hmm. So considering we've also, I mean, it looks like we're a little bit out of the drought, but that we have that as a possible tool that we know has been used in the past and been effective.
Okay, excuse me. Go ahead, Kate
Thanks
Sears.
very much. Well, so, the affordability crisis in Marin County affects not just residents of Marin City, but it really affects our middle class. There's a particular crisis in West Marin because so many of the housing stock in West Marin has become second homes, and people who have been renters are finding fewer and fewer places that they can live. Our Board of Supervisors recently did a series of 3 workshops where we heard a lot from a lot of residents all over the county about the challenges. And this was our seniors, residents of the canal, middle class residents around the county, and particularly residents of West Marin. One of the things that I think was so particularly positive about these workshops was it was an opportunity for us to really have a free-ranging conversation about a variety of alternatives. One of the alternatives that our board very strongly promotes, that dovetails with where you started in your question, Peter, was the purchasing of existing affordable housing to make sure that it stays affordable. And that's something that the county has done in 2 different locations now, and is something that we will continue to do going forward as we can with the resources of our Housing Trust Fund.
But explicitly, the board declined to do anything to protect renters' rights, to limit evictions. Isn't
That's
that
because
correct?
we were looking at some of the other alternatives, and particularly there's a very innovative approach of junior second units that our board is strongly supportive of, that I think would serve a variety of issues. Many of our residents, particularly a lot of our seniors, are house rich and cash poor, and they may be isolated. And I think if we can spread the development of junior second units, which would take a room in an existing home and create a rental opportunity there, that can solve isolation and support issues as well as housing issues.
I think Damon came in and talked a little bit about that issue, but he also talked about, or what I've heard is, that in West Marin, particularly, Airbnb people are moving in. These houses are coming off the market. Isn't there something to do there to control that?
And that's something I think our board will be looking at. I've had people, Tiburon looked at that issue, Sausalito looked at that issue, San Francisco obviously really looked at it with the ballot measure. And one of the challenges, if as a county you're passing regulations that need to make sense in all parts of unincorporated counties, so West Marin and also in our more densely settled areas, and we want to make sure that however we might choose to move forward on that issue is suitable for all of our areas, but we will be looking at that.
If I could just add, Mill Valley also has a regulation around Airbnb, and I think a part of what they did that was really smart is that they made a distinction between owner-occupied Airbnb and those people who are coming in buying up properties and then really effectively taking them off the market for rentals. So there's a real important distinction between those 2 things to make.
Traffic backups are a daily migraine for Marin drivers, and it's not just the 101 freeway. Please offer at least 3 concrete proposals to ease the congestion, especially in southern Marin. First to you, Kate Sears.
Thank you. So I've been working very closely with the City of Mill Valley and the City of Tiburon on several different initiatives. For those people who are signed up for my electronic news, you will see a news item that went out today about the Yellow School Bus Pilot Project. That's a collaboration between the county, the City of Mill Valley, and the Mill Valley School District. And that pilot program is really specifically intended to alleviate traffic across the 101 overpass of people driving from Strawberry to Mill Valley, taking their kids to school on other sides of that overpass. We are also supporting Tiburon. They had launched a Yellow School Bus Project last year that had an incredible impact on traffic on the Tiburon corridor, and we are supporting the continuation of that project. I'm also working very closely with the City of Mill Valley and Caltrans to make both short and long-term improvements to the traffic backup at East Blythedale and the 101 overpass, and that involves a variety of different measures. Last year, I convinced Caltrans to not put in an additional stoplight at North Knoll Road on East Tiburon Boulevard, which would have made traffic that much worse. Many of these issues, as you know, there's no quick fix, but we need to be looking at a variety of issues. We're also taking additional steps in Tam Valley to deal with some of the traffic congestion there, and specifically we'll be prohibiting left turns from Shoreline Highway as you're traveling towards Tam Junction. We're going to prohibit left turns into that ARCO station because that's been a problem of preventing people from passing through the green light at Tam Junction. So all of these measures, we need to take a holistic approach, work together. I'd love to find the money. I've talked to Caltrans about how can we modernize our signals for our entire southern Marin area so we have better coordination. And that's something that we'll keep working with Caltrans and look for funding for.
Susan Kirsch on
Yes.
traffic.
So I'll just say I've been out walking precincts, and so traffic comes up as the number one issue for almost every person who I talk to in any of the households. You know, I want to point out that in terms of the traffic group that met in Mill Valley that was looking at the item that you were describing that resulted in the yellow bus program, you know, a part of that where there was consternation is the fact that Strawberry was not invited to have a seat at the table, and the fact that this, having been a district-wide, even a county-wide issue, is one of those things that there might have been leadership from a county supervisor to have initiated that process, and instead it fell to the city of Mill Valley to do that. And there was the problem of not getting the right people at the table, that Strawberry, being as impacted as they will be with the Seminary project, there's another big project called Bentley Holdings at the Belvedere place that people are really concerned about. They wanted a place at the table and instead had to keep sitting back in the peanut gallery because they hadn't been officially a part of that.
Strawberry didn't show very much appetite for buses, though, did they?
No, they certainly didn't.
Yeah, there was a rather big controversy about bringing one bus line in there, and I live in that neighborhood. I'm completely affected by that overpass, and I was just shocked at really the rejection of any mass transportation alternative over
Exactly.
there.
It was the folks on Belvedere Drive that really had trouble with the shuttle bus from Marin Transit coming down their street. I'd also like to correct one thing. At my urging, the city of Mill Valley that did create this task force that I participated in along with Caltrans did invite representation from Tam Valley and from Strawberry to join that group. Someone from Tam Valley joined, but no one from Strawberry chose to join. And I also would like to mention that Marin Transit will be increasing its public bus service by 17% this spring, because obviously we need to work hard to get more people onto public transit as well. And the Golden Gate Bridge District is taking over the ferry service in Tiburon. So I think all these are positive moves for public transit.
Well, these unresolved problems of housing and traffic, in a way, are in conflict with Marin's long-term general plan, and that's to preserve as much open space as possible. Generally, there has been steering growth towards the 101 corridor, and people are okay with that. People are okay with keeping open space in West Marin, I mean. But moving into the 101 corridor sort of raises a lot of ire. What's the big picture and your vision for Marin and growth, Susan?
Well, I think the big picture is that we really need to keep and preserve open space for those of us who live along the corridor too. I think many people are finding it upsetting to see how the views and vistas for those of us who live close into 101 are being destroyed, and Wincup is one of those great examples of people looking at that and being horrified with the idea of that being high-density housing near transit. But I mean, there used to be a hillside that you could see from that, and the same thing is true in Mill Valley and some of those places where they've proposed high-density housing. You know, at the East Blythedale Camino Alto intersection is an example. So I think we're moving in the right direction. I think the fact that we're having the conversation in a much more civil way than we did for a while before people had really been informed about what was going on and what the choices are is a good thing. And
but the reality to me is if we don't want growth in the open space in West Marin, and we don't want growth in the corridor in 101, what happens? I mean, what, you know, is this
moratorium?
Well, I mean, is that a possibility in a county like this, in an area like this, where people really would like to be here if they could afford to be here?
Well, I'll just add, I mean, we know there's a big push on the part of regional planning agencies to have every community take their fair share. And so, you know, the ABAG is, you know, there's the potential hostile takeover of the Association of Bay Area Governments to be taken over by MTC, the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, who have talked about how if cities don't take their fair share, there should be either carrots or sticks, and that they use money for transportation as a part of trying to seduce communities to do building that they may not really want for their community. And now there's a part of looking at how they would also use more, you know, sticks to be able to coerce communities into building that they might not want.
Okay.
So, you know, we've traditionally been a very slow growth community, and I don't believe that will change. One of the things I did find alarming in our most recent cycles of conversation about growth and development in the county were some voices who did seem to challenge the way we have been managing growth since the 1970s with our countywide plan of making sure that we preserved our open space in West Marin, we preserved our agriculture, we have our strong network and necklace of county parks. It's very important that we do preserve our open space. I continue to believe that there are opportunities for infill development that is right-sized for our community. None of us in Southern Marin were ever interested in having something on the scale of WinCup in our community, and that was never a reality. It was unfortunate that that became a conversation point. I think that we do need to really look at options that are not yet recognized by the state to count towards our RENA numbers, and how do we reuse existing buildings that we already have instead of always thinking about building new. How do we reuse? Are there commercial spaces that can be used for housing? Are there other opportunities, as I talked before about the junior second units, of reusing our housing the way that we have? A lot of times I think people tend to just accept the turnover in our very large single-family homes without considering the impact on water use, traffic, and other aspects of our community by our single-family home turnover. That's something we need to keep in mind and make sure we're not just focusing on other forms of affordable housing to address our broader needs. But whatever we do needs to be right-sized. And I think one of the benefits of the conversations we've had in recent years is that people are paying attention. But we need to work in a positive way and make sure that we're not always just saying no. We're saying, here's what I object to, here's some of the problems, and here's some of the alternatives, so we can try to make things that are productive happen. We also, as a board, and I was very involved in getting our default density for affordable housing changed from the urban number of 30 to the suburban number of 20. So that gives us an extra protection from some of the state pressures on the size of development that certain people may be seeking.
So our final question is a pretty open one, but I'd like to ask each of you to tell us what your number one priority is if you become supervisor or if you are reelected, and what you're willing to promise voters about how you'll go about achieving that central goal. And let me start with you, Susan.
Yes. Well, I think one of the things that makes Marin special to all of us is the quality of life that is that kind of blend of environmental and creativity and the diversity that's here in Marin, and that we really want to maintain that. I think for me, as I look at this campaign and moving forward and what I would intend to bring to the Board of Supervisors is that quality of transparency and openness and accessibility, that I'm a person who listens. I have a track record of getting things done, listening to people. The second part of it that we really haven't had much of a chance to talk about today is the issue of using money wisely. And I would be committed to working on those issues that are related to money management and fiscal accountability. And the third thing is to be respectful of those citizen groups that are working so hard in a volunteer way, like the Civil Grand Jury or Citizens for Sustainable Pension Plans, to be able to bring their voices to the table, to have a big say in what the future of the county is.
All right. Kate Sears.
So I'd say an overarching goal for me, and it relates to what I just said, is making sure that we are working together and we are really finding common ground, and we're increasing our attention really to the common good. I think so often in addressing many problems locally, people tend to think very specifically about what's the impact on me, what's the impact on my block, what's the impact on my street. For the problems that confront us as a community and really as a world, whether it's the traffic issues we've been talking about, the housing issues we've been talking about, the larger issues of climate change and sea level rise, we need to be working together. Traffic unites us. This is something that I think many of us are coming to an awareness of the need to work together. I spent a lot of time working on climate change and sea level rise issues, and to me that's the perfect issue for getting people thinking more broadly. Because as you know, you might put up a wall in front of your house to protect your interests, but the water goes to your neighbors. And so we need to make sure that we are thinking about the impact on each other, we are finding that common ground, and we're finding positive ways from a grassroots engagement level to work together to address the issues that we have going forward, regardless of what they are. So that's what I will continue doing.
All right. Well, I want to thank you both, and we have just an extra minute here, so I have a bonus question. You've been campaigning opposite each other. Let me ask each of you what you've learned from the other's talking points and campaign issues, and where you find areas of agreement. And let me start first with you.
So I think we have, both my opponent and I have been out walking in our community, and that's a wonderful thing to be doing. It's really great to go to someone's door and listen to what's on their mind. And I think there's agreement between us in terms of the importance of communication and making sure that we are listening. That's something that I have done from the beginning, but I believe that those are values that we share.
Stop that. And Susan, what have you found that you have in common with Kate Sears?
Well, I think that feeling of establishing the common ground, that really is a part of what we both look to do in terms of the work that we do in the community, and that she strives to do on the board, that I would also strive to do on the board. I think she does have a reputation for I'm struggling because I'm picturing her response to saying she was sitting in the back of the room at the strawberry event, and I guess maybe it more comes out as a distinction that I think I'm more often in the front of the room, not in the back of the room, and would look to be more in the front of the room as moving into the Board of Supervisor position.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you both and wish you best on Election Day this June. Supervisor Kathrin Sears, Challenger Susan Kirsch. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
And
Voices and Views.
I must say that both of the candidates are so competent, and contrasting that with what we hear on television at a national level is really quite reassuring for people in Marin, and for me as a citizen of Marin to be represented by you, Kate, or possibly being represented by you, Susan. So thank you both.
Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Very good. Thank you both.
Thank you both.